Unfortunately, some of the translators got really excited, and this is about 70 years ago, and they used the word slaughter. That's not very good. That was not a good choice of words. Because today, people, when you say slaughter, they think you're going to do like the biha on somebody. Especially when they're talking about Muslims are cutting off heads and all the rest of it. It's scary. What kind of religion do you have? And I understand their trepidation. I had the same problem. This affected me the same way. But then I came to know that this is not Islam. It has nothing to do with Islam, as we're going to see in a minute. For those 10 or 13 years that the Muslims were enduring a lot of oppression from their own relatives and families, their own tribes, who were coming up against them and attacking them and abusing them even physically. They were not responding back any more than just simple self-defense. They never organized any kind of a combat against them. Now, underline this word, combat. Did you hear me? Combat. I want you to use that word when you're talking, because we're going to come back to it. Okay? Now, what happened was, after the Muslims had been put out, they had sanctions against them. They were outside of their territory. Nobody could go out to where they were. I forget what exiled. Like exiled out of their own property, put out, left to die out in the valley for a couple of years. Long time. They made a migration to Medina. And when they were there, then they became reinforced. And then a verse comes. Okay? But it tells them to go make Hajj. Go read it. It's in Surah Baqarah 189. Telling about Hajj, that the months are known to you. The moon, the months, this is what you go by lunar calendar. This is time for your Hajj. That's what it says. Unless somebody changed it. They didn't change it in 1400 years. I'll just check it right now. I can remember the Bibles that I used to pick up when I was preaching. I would pick one up and I'd go, oh, set it down, pick up another one. This is the wrong one. There's a beautiful thing about Arabic and the Quran. It doesn't change. Yeah, here's what it says. They ask you, Muhammad, about the new moons. Say, these are signs to mark the first periods of time for mankind and for the pilgrimage, the Hajj. It's not al-bir, that you enter the houses by the back, but al-bir is that you fear Allah. It's a taqwa for Allah. So enter your houses through the proper doors. Fear Allah that you'll be successful. Wa katilu. The word is wa. What is wa? That's and. Nobody begins a sentence with and. You ever have me walk up to you and say, and the bus shall be here in about... No, they don't say and. They say the bus will be here. Huh? Or they'll say, when will the bus be? But and when will the bus be here? Nobody talks like that. So likewise, Allah didn't talk like this. He doesn't say just wa, unless it's like wal asr. In that case, it's a swearing by something. But it says, wa katilu fi sabilillah. So do qital for the sake of Allah. I'm going to leave it in Arabic for you for a minute. Now I want you to think about it. Those who do qital to you, but don't transgress the limits. What did I tell you earlier? Islam is about rights and limits. Rights, yes, but limits. And here it comes. Don't transgress the limits. And do katilu, do qital to them wherever you find them, and turn them out from wherever they turned you out. And al-fitna is worse than qital. And don't do qital with them at the Masjid al-Haram, the place of making the pilgrimage, unless they first attack you there. But if they qital you, then qital them. Such is the payback for the disbelievers. But if they cease, then Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. And qital them until there's no more fitna, and worship is for Allah alone. But if they stop, then let there be no transgression against the zalimun, the polytheists or wrongdoers. I repeat, I left it in Arabic for a reason. Because if you start trying to play with this and use different words to have variety in English, you're going to get in trouble. And you'll say things like kill, slaughter, maim, destroy, stuff. This is not really the essence of what's being said, inshallah. Because if you understood it, as I understood it, the Muslims had been turned out of their own property, of their own homes, their own land and nation. Yes or no? Everybody with me? Everybody still awake? Or am I boring you? Okay. So, here's what we're saying. When Islam came to these Arabs, it didn't come to teach them how to fight and kill people. They already knew how to do that. Think. Remember, before Islam came, they had a 40-year feud, a war between tribes over a camel race. Yes or no? A camel won the race. One of the other tribes threw a rock, killed the camel. They killed the boy. They killed that boy. They killed this one, back and forth. 40 years go by, and they're killing over what? A camel race. You don't have to teach Arabs how to fight. They're born with a rock in their hand. They know how to do it. What Allah did was to take time to let them learn how not to fight, so that you can find the balance between rights and limitations. So He gave them the limit first. And they were very patient. Very patient. They had to be patient. The Prophet ﷺ wasn't going to let them be any other way. They had to hold back, hold back, hold back. And then the order came. Okay. Now, Yuqatilu. What is qital? I'm going to translate it as mortal combat. Mortal combat. Because you have to translate to a word that's in use today, that people know how to use it and how it works. Mortal combat. Meaning I've got to be willing to kill and be killed for the sake of what? To stop al-fitna. What is fitna? Now, we could go back and read the verses again, and you'd see how the combat fits right in there. Do combat with them because they did combat with you. Stop the combat if they stop the combat with you. You see how that works all the way to the end. But then at the end, it says, and continue the qital until the way can be established for Allah. And some of them said this means until they submit and become Muslims. Even Muslim translators said it. And it's wrong, because that would negate another beautiful verse in the same surah. La ikraha fi din. And Allah doesn't compel anybody to submit to Him. That's what you got a life for. It's always going to be your choice. But what it does, it establishes it so that there's a way for people to come to Allah. The door is open. You don't have to, but at least there has to be some kind of a setting where people can know about what's Islam and know about Allah and then be able to come to Him. It has to be their choice. That's all it's talking about. So we've solved all but one thing. What's fitna? Fitna is when things are so bad that Islam can't spread. It's so bad when you can't do anything. It's like really the worst. It's like what you say in Texas, it's kind of like falling down in a rolled up barbed wire fence. It's fitna. So when you see aggression and oppression, and when you see the big guys coming down on the little guys and doing bad things to them, innocent women, children, elders being attacked, being killed, people being thrown out of their homes, being run over by bulldozers or whatever, then this is what? Fitna. Now in English, the best word to call that is what Mr. Bush calls it. Terrorism. So fight them until the terrorism is over. With what? Limitations of combat. Within God's limitations. Makes sense? So who declared the war on terrorism? Mr. Bush? No, he only repeated. And he, at the same time, by the way, when he said this on Thursday night, 2 days after 9/11, stood on the White House lawn, made the announcement, told everybody that he's declaring a war against terrorism. He said in the same speech, Islam is a peaceful religion. Well, that's a very nice thing, and we support him in that. And we support a war against terrorism because we got the ayahs for it right here. In fact, if he'd like to make shahada, we'd like to accept it. That'll be 2 guys from Texas. How about that? All right. Now, 1400 years ago, Allah told us the rules and regulations, the rights and limits for combat. And that's what it was talking about. But it's important for Muslims not to sidestep the issue. Don't say Islam is peace. And all we want is peace, and there's no fighting in Islam unless it's self-defense, because that's not true. Just as Mr. Bush ordered the people to go into Afghanistan because he wanted to preempt anything that could happen there. He went into Iraq and preempt anything that could go into there. And he gave a good example, so when people want to know what happened at the wells of Badr, ask Mr. Bush. He's an expert on this subject. Preemptive. So, combat terrorism. So, Islam is the answer for terrorism. You get out of line, there's a rule. Because you have rights, but I have rights too. And so does every other person. Of the 7 billion human beings on this earth, every single one of them has rights. And Allah is the creator of all of them. And He wants all of them to have their rights. So it's up to us as people who understand that to stand up for what is right and righteous. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's what Islam's stand is on terrorism. And I hope Allah guide all of us to understand that and put that to good use. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.